G'day and welcome to another edition of the Aussie Ideas Man. This has nothing to do with Aptera at all. This is about Jim's EV adventures or something and how he just happens to be a cretin. And so I'd like to explain why. There's no point calling somebody a cretin unless you can establish good reason for doing so. I don't like to throw my nicknames around willy-nilly. The usual format, like I do with Aptera, I'll watch it through fairly quickly, just say what I think I need to say as it comes to mind, and then when I look at it a little bit more closely in the replay, I will add the text boxes to add everything that I think of that I didn't think of on the spot. So here we go.
Welcome back to Jim's EV Adventures. Today we're taking a journey through time, not to marvel at past inventions, but to imagine what life would be like if we clung to outdated technology.
Now I've just added this repeat of that time that the clock starts working because this really shows what a dope this guy is. If you look at that clock, it's spinning forward and we're going forward in time. Yet he uses it to say, let's wind back the time. We're going forward in time. Just watch as I've added roughly what time it is every 30 minutes. If you don't think that's going forward in time, have a look at it a few times over.
The same way some people cling to the internal combustion engine. There's a phrase that we've all heard, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But when it comes to cars powered by carbon-based fuels or anything that must burn, let's be clear, it is broke.
He says, let's be clear, but you look at what he says in the rest of his video that makes it being broke clear. He doesn't say anything to clarify it, almost nothing. So he's conning you there. The ICE engine is not broke. It has got better and better over the decades and is superior to EVs in many, many ways. There is nothing broke about it.
Clinging to outdated technology is a form of backwards thinking.
In and of itself, there isn't much wrong with what he said there. But when it comes to ICE engines, we're not clinging to outdated technology. The electric motor has not outdated the ICE engine as of today even. It's getting better and better, but it hasn't made the ICE engine outdated. Once again, don't be fooled. He has no proof that the EV has made the ICE engine outdated technology. Not in the slightest. Look for evidence of anything people say. Don't just swallow guff as it's presented.
Backwards thinking is the thing that holds us back from progress. Imagine if we still lit our homes with candles or communicated with telegraphs. Just because something works does not mean it cannot be improved. Let's explore what life would be like if we had refused to evolve in other areas of life, and see why clinging to internal combustion engine vehicles simply doesn't make sense a quarter way through the 21st century.
Now, here's another bit of warped logic. If you show an example of something that is removed from the internal combustion engine, and you show another thing that is removed from the internal combustion engine, you cannot say then the internal combustion engine is in the same boat. You cannot just lump it in as that's all the same category. I know he's trying to establish a pattern, but one sparrow doesn't make a summer, and two unrelated examples doesn't make a group.
Here we go. Imagine lighting your home today with candles, oil lamps, or gas lamps. Sure, they work, but would anyone seriously choose them over modern lighting, aside from the Amish? The progression has been simple, from fire to candle to oil lamp to gas lamp to incandescent bulb to LED bulb. We are in the 21st century. LED bulbs are brighter, longer lasting, and far more efficient. Imagine someone saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, while fumbling with a candle to read their book in the middle of the night.
So if a person does that, they're a fool. And I've got no argument with what he presents here for light, but not for driving around. This is a good example for light. I agree with it, but it's for light. It doesn't apply to the ICE engine and the EV motor and how each has progressed.
This evolution didn't happen overnight, but once we discovered better methods, we didn't hesitate to leave outdated options behind.
I'll also add that if you want a romantic evening out with somebody you want to impress, you would probably go for candle lights on the dinner table and not flood the room with LED lighting. Of course, you wouldn't use it to read a book at night, but there are still times to use it. They're also good to keep at home for when the grid goes off.
So, what's our holdup? Now, imagine trying to text your friend using stone tablets or waiting weeks for a letter to be delivered by horseback or ship. From stone tablet to paper to the printing press to the telegraph to the telephone and now the smartphone, today we communicate instantly with high definition video calls and global connectivity. Why? Because it's faster, easier.
So now we know that progress is good when it comes to light, and so he shows that progress is also good when it comes to communicating. The thing about communicating is that each person stays where they are. They can be at separate places, nobody's going anywhere, or doesn't have to be. So, of course, we use modern methods of communication. That makes sense, but it still doesn't apply for when people want to move from A to B. And that's what the ICE engine and the EV motor does for people. It gets them from A to B. And the best way to get from A to B is still using an ICE engine. We had a little bit of communication on his comments section, and I gave a list of why the ICE engine is superior to an EV at the moment. And he just shot the messenger, called me out for being an idiot, and did not address any of the points that I made, not the slightest, because he's a dumbass, and now I'm calling him out for being an idiot. You can choose between us. Just have a good think. I have decided I have found a cretin, and I believe he deserves to be exposed. This sort of stuff on YouTube is nonsense, absolute nonsense, and it has to stop.
And better. Imagine if someone said, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it," while chiseling out a text message. You'd actually question their sanity, wouldn't you?
I'll pause again because if I wanted to have something last for centuries, I would be better off engraving it on a stone tablet. It would have a better chance of lasting. If I was to make a video, send a text message, write a letter, send a telegram, even though they're outdated. If I was to do any of the more modern things, none of them would be as effective in lasting for millennia than a stone tablet. And so these things still have their use. It's just that we're not inclined to want to have something last for centuries and centuries. We don't care. But the usefulness of a stone tablet is still there. It just has to be at the appropriate event.
Imagine commuting to work on a horse drawn carriage, or better yet, trying to win a race against a modern car. Sure, horses have served us well, but when automobiles came along, we didn't hesitate to switch. From the horse to the steam engine, to the gasoline engine, the hybrid, and now the electric vehicle, it's time for us to make the change.
And now this is where his analogy falls apart. It's okay that, yes, riding a horse beats walking. Going on Stephenson's rocket probably was a little better than riding a horse in many ways. Still slower, but the one train could carry far more people than a horse. And on and up through each stage of progress, we chose the more progressive part because it was superior to the one before it. So we have this chain of changes where each is proven to be superior to the one before it. The problem with this guy is he thinks EVs are superior than ICE engines, and it is completely unfounded. And he hasn't got the intelligence to establish this fact. He's pulling the wool over your eyes. What I'm saying is the ICE engine is still superior to this very day. If you wanted to go out and buy either an EV or an ICE car, you can get a superior product by buying the ICE car. Now, I'll tell you now, I own an ICE car and an EV. I bought a brand new BYD 803 nearly 2 years ago and have driven it for 50,000 kilometres. And I know its strengths and its weaknesses. I have a sports car with a 3.5 litre V6 engine and the top folds into the boot, so it's a convertible. and I know its strengths and weaknesses. And believe me, where one is better than the other, one is also worse than the other. But overall, if you're going to generalise, the ICE cars are still superior to EVs. I like my EV. I like it for what it does and for what's different about it compared to my ICE car. But I'm no fool, and I don't try to con people into thinking that EVs are now superior to ICE cars. They're not. Their time has not yet come. They've spent about 13 or 14 years trying. They're getting closer and closer, but they still have not come. When they get superior to ICE cars, then it's time to move on. And then you might have your ICE cars as toys, veteran and vintage cars. But you're not an idiot if you stick to an ICE car for your own personal reasons. He's trying to make people look silly, and he's conning people with his analogies.
The internal combustion engine was revolutionary in its time, but let's be honest and forthright. It's broken. The internal combustion engine still breathes out the same levels of CO2 that it did in 1896. Physics have not changed just because we removed the lead from gasoline and added a catalytic converter to reduce the amount of particulate poisons that increase smog.
So now he's actually telling you that physics doesn't change, but there's less poisons in the smoke coming out of an ICE engine. This is contradictory, but let me clarify. Over a century ago, you'd be lucky to get 6 miles per gallon out of your engine. Today, you can get well over 60 miles per gallon out of an engine. That's improved by a factor of 10. You can now drive 10 vehicles as far as you once could drive one and only pollute the same amount. But that pollution is cleaner because of no lead and catalytic converters. So it's improved both ways. And yet he's trying to say somehow that the ICE engine is archaic and is not able to improve. It has constantly improved and still improves. It's been marvellous at how much the internal combustion engine has improved. So once again, it's a fallacy what he's bringing up. And while he makes excuses for the unleaded fuel and the catalytic converter, in reality, they show, with also the other progressive features that make ICE engines go 10 times further on the same amount of fuel, that this is a technology that has not outrun its time. It can go much better and better, and the EV has to get better than it. And at this particular time, it's not really within cooey of it. But he's making the point. He should prove his point first. I'll just let you have a think, and if you need anything proving, put it in the comments and I will prove it to you in writing. Not enough time to do it on the video.
The worst part of the exhaust gases are still there. They're called greenhouse gases.
So they have a name, they're greenhouse gases. How do we know they're the worst part of the gases? How do we know that greenhouse gases are as bad as some scientists say? You'll find that those scientists are fairly unfounded in their claims. I think presently there isn't sufficient evidence to say that greenhouse gases are as bad as they are claimed to be by a few scientists.
And despite the FUD you hear from the lamestream media and from the brain dead talking heads on social media,
and this is what I like about him. Take note, not only has he called me unintelligent, and I think he finished with, you need to read the comments. I'll point them out to you. But I think he finished with, what did he? Bonehead, that's what. I'm a bonehead, he called me. Okay. But now he's calling everybody that does social media about ice cars, I should imagine, that they're all brain dead. Let's see if he's a hypocrite. Now, I call people names, and I'm straight and upfront and will call a spade all the time. But I don't pretend to be anything otherwise. I don't say, let's all be nice to each other and then be nasty. What you see is what you get with me. This guy's a bit more deceptive.
they will always be there when you burn carbon based materials. There's no magic converter that can turn exhaust gases back into fuel. It just does not exist.
Who wants a converter to turn exhaust gases back into fuel? As far as I know, nobody. I'm 71 years old. I've never heard of the concept. I've been a follower of cars and motorbikes all my adult life, and probably longer. And I have never heard of this idea that people want to turn their exhaust gases back into fuel. It's a silly argument out of left field. It has no basis behind it.
Now let's talk about the mythical statement of if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's not a mythical statement. It's a very real statement. No myth about it. But people say if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and still like to use superior products when they come along. They don't say if a superior product comes along, denigrate the prior one. But this guy is. He's denigrating a technology that is the or almost the sole reason for our progress. We would all be possibly still living in caves if it wasn't for the internal combustion engine, and it needs to be appreciated, not denigrated. It is a backward thinker who denigrates what has got him his house and his job and his lifestyle.
Let's face it, the internal combustion engine is broken. It's inefficient, polluting, and outdated.
So the broken parts are inefficient, polluting, and outdated. The internal combustion engine is still far more efficient than an EV. We'll have to generalise, but just look at what you can buy in both cases and you'll find the ICE engine is more efficient. Now you have to include the fuel source. You have to go, well, we've got an engine and a tank full of fossil fuel. Together, what is that efficiency? And on an EV, you've got a motor and a massive heavy battery pack. And together, what is their efficiency? Because both have to be together, both have to move around on the vehicle. And this is the problem of the EV. If it didn't need the battery, a motor compared to an engine is more efficient. But once you have to couple them, the combined motor and battery is about half as efficient as a combined engine and fuel tank. These are facts. I'm happy to discuss them further with anybody, and I mean anybody, in comments. I think the second one was pollutants. Well, certainly we do have an exhaust that pollutes all the time you use your ICE vehicle. But in the making of the vehicle, there is far less pollutants than making an EV. The deadly materials that go into batteries cause a lot of pollutants. And then the disposal of said EV at the end of life is also highly pollutant. And we're talking deadly pollutants, more deadly than smoke in the air. The jury is still out on which is the worst overall, and we have to look at cars in the complete picture. The manufacture, the use, and the disposal, all together. We don't separate one from the other. But people who try to con you into going, we need to get rid of cars, they will just focus on the use. And the last one, I had to look back at the video, was that it's outdated. Well, no. It will only become outdated when the EV becomes better. When it's patently superior, then these are outdated. The ICE vehicle will become outdated. What he's doing is bringing it forward, and the EV's time has not yet come. He's jumping the gun. He's crossing bridges before he gets to them. All the silly things that fools do. When he can prove that the EV has made the ICE vehicle outdated, then that's when you should believe him. At this stage in time, you should go, what a fool. He has no proof. He's like a gossip.
Imagine applying the if it ain't broke mentality to other areas of our life.